Hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. Thanks so much for coming to tonight's book talk. And I do want to point out that we will be having our 20th anniversary celebration on Saturday, July 11th. That's from 10 to 5 p.m. So stop in and join the party. Now, tonight's book, Baker's Dozen. Shay Baker, daughter, close friend, photographer, suddenly takes her own life. The ghosts of unanswered questions and unresolved feelings haunting those who survive her. Left in her wake is a series of mysterious photos and letters, some sent to key figures in her life, others to only passing relationships. Most and writers for more than a decade. So please join me in a warm welcome for Dasha.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for making this time. Thank you for welcoming Shay and this book. And we're just going to get right into this story. Immaculate. Royal watched Bug thread herself through the crowd of mourners. She crossed the fellowship hall, pivoting her voluminous feathered sleeve between the clusters of guests. Royal could take in the whole outfit as Bug emerged from the people. Black feather bolero, leather skirt, black glitter tights, and tall boots. Royal felt himself smile, muscles he hadn't much used since Shay died. Royal nodded his approval for the ensemble, opening his arms just as Bug's composure caved. She unfastened her pleasant expression and leaned the point of her head into a sternum. He cupped the points of her elbows and they were still. Bug, whose real name was Carmen, had been friends with Shay since their 20s. For the past 15 years, they'd evolved from clubbing and blind dates to pediatric nursing and a live-in partner for Bug, and commercial photography and a hive of options for Shay. Bug and Royal have become compatriots and occasionally co-conspirators in their overlapping care and affection for Shay. Royal felt his eyes burning again as he shielded Bug's petite frame with his arms. He focused on the movement of the people in front of him rather than the slush and swell of her tumbled back. Royal and Bug stood in a recessed landing to the side of the sanctuary entrance, observing the flow of mourners. Every brand of human filed by. Pastors, painters, prostitutes, politicians, and all lives in between. As a preacher's kid turned party girl turned entrepreneur, the reach of Shay's worlds had been vast. More accurately, Shay Baker had been vast. Predictable and unknowable, she was an energy that stilled a room. Like a backdraft before an implosion, her presence promised something epic. She had been an immaculate implosion. After a minute or two, Bug spoke without turning to face him. "I have something for you," she said, her voice catching. "From Shay." Royal turned, his eyes warm. Bug's profile was pinched. Puzzled, he waited, looking down at the T-shaped part defining her sleek bob and bangs. Her breaths were deep and slow. "This huge box came the other day," Bug said, stiffly jutting out her arms about 2 feet. The black feathers of her bolero lifted and danced. "Collages for me, Queen Anne, and Stephanie, pre-stamped envelopes for you and a bunch of other people." When she looked up, her eyes were both wet and dark and on fire. She knew, Royal. When she left that hospital, she knew she wasn't coming back to us. Royal's face was of stunned confusion as Bug's darkened with anger. "She lived 15 minutes from me, Royal. Why did that box take more than a week to reach me?" Her voice trembled down to a hiss. "Because she planned for it too. She knew she was gonna leave, Royal. I want to cuss her out so bad, but I can't." Royal pulled Bug into an embrace, absorbing her wails into his suit coat. People entered the sanctuary and offered their slight and somber nods as they passed. Her sobs subsided into a hiccuping whimper as Shay's family assembled for their procession in the sanctuary. Royal gave Bug's elbow a squeeze, and he felt her gather her breath before pulling away. He pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket and handed it to her. "My grandfather said women love this move." Bug snorted a laugh in spite of herself. Hell yeah, we do, Gramps. She dotted her eyes and nose and handed the folded hanky back to him. Thank you, boy. He dropped the knot into his jacket pocket and slid his hands into the pocket of his slacks. As the processional line began to organize itself into the hall, they both noticed the scrutinizing gaze of Shay's older brother, Marcus. Bug tossed a length of hair over her shoulder as she turned away from Marcus's glare. Ugh, this mug, she said, wincing. She quickly pressed a hand to her breastplate and mumbled an apology to God. I can't even with his condescending ass. Not today. Let me go find the girls in my seat. Meet us at the set later? Royal confirmed, buttoning his jacket. Bug marched ahead, bypassing the family cluster and following an usher into the church body. Royal moved slowly, refusing to rush. Approaching the queue, he sauntered over to kiss Mrs. Baker on the cheek and to embrace Shay's oldest sibling, Danielle. He and Marcus held eyes for an icy exchange before turning into the sanctuary. Royal walked Bug to her car. The crisp breezes that had sweetened the sky for Shay's services were giving way to the snapping whips of wind. They were outside of Shay's favorite reggae bar for a life celebration they planned for her chosen family. The strict traditional service her brother Marcus had planned for their family was the opposite energy of how Shay had lived her life. The sun hadn't even set yet, and the bar was already filled with Shay's eclectic universe. Bug was parked a block away. She wanted to make her exchange before the night winds and rum shots could own them all. They moved swiftly, leaning into the wind's edges. As they neared Bug's car, the rear window decal of the Guam flag came into view. The sticker always made Royal smile. It was one of the early moments for him and Bug's allyship, and an endearing memory of Shay improving Shay. Bug had been excited to connect with the Guamanian community, something she'd missed since moving to the area for college. Shay had been dismissive of her friend's efforts. Bug had snapped at Shay, saying, "You think blacks and Puerto Ricans are the only brown folks with pride?" Royal had pulled Shay's coat, reminding her that true friendship couldn't be threatened, and she was letting jealousy get the best of her. She hadn't liked his correction. She never did. But had emerged from her silent funk a few days later with a window decal for Bug and a CD of traditional Guamanian music. Royal remembered being proud of his friend before he really understood her. He and Bug had been locked in ever since. Bug pulled the fob from her purse, and they watched the trunk lift open. A brown box nestled between her gym duffel and a bag of pet toys. Tall envelopes waited inside, stacked on their ends. They gazed upon the box and at each other. With a huff, Bug flipped through the envelopes until she landed on the one addressed to Roy. "Here you go," she said, turning to him. Will received the envelope with both hands. He didn't feel the weight of a folded letter inside, but something stiff, maybe a greeting card. There was also a pebble of something beneath his thumb. "Open it now," Royal asked, glancing about them. Bug looked at him, a snarl on her lip. He ducked his head and nodded as he slid open the envelope. Reaching inside, he pulled out a jewelry backing card pierced with a lapel pin, an encircled golden B. Above the pin, in Shay's stylized script, she'd written, "Shay Baker's dozen." Royal held the edges of the backing card while conflicting reactions stormed through him. Delight, annoyance, despair, ache. Usually he was inspired by his creative friend. This wasn't usual. Blunt force trauma wasn't usual. Healing in secret wasn't normal. Standing outside of her favorite spot, talking about her in the past tense, not normal. Opening her gifts from beyond? Absolutely not normal. Watching Royal as he stilled, Bug gently reached for the pin. His hand was still cupped around its negative space as she unfastened the back and clipped the pin to his suit jacket. He looked down at it dumbly, feeling his face begin to twitch. He still hadn't cried. Bug took back his opened envelope and laid it in the box with the others and closed the trunk. The wind flicked at her bolero feathers in his coat sleeve. She hooked her arm into his and pointed him back towards the club. "Now, we rum," she said softly, invoking one of Shay's favorite rallying cries. Royal straightened, glancing down at the pin as Bug pulled him away from her car's trunk. Beneath the bold fashion statements and brash humor, Bug was an empathetic friend. He was filled with gratitude at her discernment. She could sense the splintering he was beginning to acknowledge beneath the compounding weight of Shay's death. His voice seized, but he mouthed in agreement. "We rum."
Wow.
I'm gonna keep going. Dangle. Rich skin gleams beneath your touch. The tip of your finger dimples a slow line tracing legs, thighs, peaks of knees, and back again. You know this terrain in your sleep. You are, in fact, asleep. Or you were. Sleep melts from your fantasy and you spring up, recoiling from the pillows and mattress. It's still there, wanting him, even in your sleep, especially in your sleep. Shame ignites in your gut, fierce and familiar, noxious fumes of a vile desire seeping up through your brokenness. Still, you relent to the bed, tucking your chin as you slide beneath the covers and wait. Darkness depresses your energy in layers. You've learned that forcing yourself from the covers too quickly can ionize shaken nerves into accelerants. Maybe you shouldn't have him over tonight. It's just a photo shoot. And you know nothing is ever innocent between you two. You are floating embers and a consuming inferno. Every time, you know better. And you will seek this grace again. Slick and pregnant with wanting, desirous thoughts might detonate in the grocery store with a red onion or mango in your hands, the produce dropping in your basket, your spine lengthening, arcing, his hand hooking beneath your knee, pushing wide your legs. You might lie back in the organic vegetables, surrendering the weight of your open yearning into his steady grip. Your howl might vibrate market windows while he angles himself into you, you calling out his name for no one to care, even as red onions and mangoes fall. Your eyes fly open again. You slap the snooze button. You take another deep breath, stretching your arms in front of you, expanding your shoulder blades. Throwing back the blanket, you perch at the edge of your bed. Your feet dangle just above the floor, and you consider this for a while.
Oh.
Thank you. We're doing all right.
Hey, yeah.
I have two more passages, one medium and one short. Oh, we don't want to do that. Not yet. Yes, we do. Gown. Lady's voice pours into the hallway, following you down the corridor. She's calling out for you to take your time and to hurry up. You aren't always sure whether Lady is being silly or serious. Oftentimes, she sounds silly in the middle of being serious. She has called you into her room where you find her refolding your towel squares into rectangles. You were excited to be assigned a chore, like a big girl, like all the other bakers. She demonstrated the trifold while you stare at your first effort, undone and in piles. She looks over and sees your long face and smooths a hand over your cheek. She should have shown you her way, she tells you. You haven't done anything wrong. She just likes things a certain way. She tips her finger on the end of your nose and says, "It's good that you tried." She says you can still put the towels away while she finishes folding. You repeat back to her correctly what tile colors go in which bathrooms, and she seems pleased. You don't see Lady's genuine smile very often. You like it, how her eyes dance and the top of her lip folds a little. Her other smile isn't fake, but it isn't real. The way fruit candy tastes like watermelon, but not really. A necessary sweet. Lady flashes her candy wrapper smile all the time, at church, to cashiers, even across the dinner table at Danielle. This is her real smile, though, plain and naturally sweet. You step deliberately down the hallway, balancing a stack of hunter green bath towels. You step into the bathroom and slowly bend your knees to lower the tower intact. You unfold your stepper from beside the basin. Pastor brought it home once so you could reach the sink until you got tall like everyone else. Pastor points his attention to you randomly. His face is usually terse and clicking, like he's constantly doing times tables in his head or trying to remember a song. He doesn't coo over you, but he's always kind. You don't get to see his easy smile much either. His real smile is lopsided and cinched, like a drawstring keeping something safe. You restore the shelf of towels and store your booster step. You head back to Lady's room to retrieve the other stacks of towels. Navy for Lady and Pastor's room, burgundy for the guest room. You don't mind shuttling back and forth. You aren't like some of the other kids at church school who complain profanely about making their bed or picking up after their pets. Mama told you everyone in the world has a job, even the people who don't get up and go anywhere. Everyone has something to offer, something to do. She says she only gave you small jobs because your body is still small. She said you would have big hands one day and a big job. Your small hands could pluck rubbish or brush away leaves to help her make a new nest. That's what Mama called them. You and Mama made nests in a tool shed, in a vacant store, and one time in an old pickup truck. Your hands were tiny then. Your mama won't believe how big your hands have grown. Holding your palms up to hers, your fingers would now cover her palm. She'll laugh about you growing taller than her soon. Your mama isn't a big person. Both of you were mere children, really. She had just turned 18 when she had you. After storming out of her last foster home in her last year of high school, she landed in a 2-bedroom upper flat shared with 6 other people. Half were still teens, and the other 3 in their early 20s. Mama wasn't fazed by the liquor, the weed smoke, and the occasional pills. She had been known to indulge, ingest, imbibe, and still make sure her friends got home safely and her school assignments were completed. When she let loose all the way. She was content with being in the mix, she would say, and not being the main nut. What was new, though, was a constant presence of boys, young men, and the indiscriminate sizzle beneath her layers of flesh. Fresh crackles of fire seared through her bra and t-shirts, chased down the denim seams of her inner thighs. She forgot about summer jobs. She forgot about her driver's license test. She forgot about cause and effect, planting and harvest, sowing and reaping. She got so swept up in being grown, she forgot about wanting to be free. By summer's end, the high of living on sheer defiance was fading. The school year started, and she took herself to the school building every morning. It was her last year, and she needed only 4 classes to graduate. She didn't want the summer haze to become her life. She thought she did, but the mornings after were heavy, and the daylight exposed an aggregate, sober despair. Most nights, the house sank into the fresh fog of sipping, smoking, music videos, groping, dice, spades, and a steady stream of instigators and visitors. The party cost got real for your mother by the holidays. Eggs, rice, sandwiches, and boxed macaroni and cheese were plentiful, but there were 7 summits now. The others were pooling their social service benefits for groceries and household essentials, but her state funds were still being deposited into her foster parents' account. She wiped away ashes and blunt wrappers and swirled the toilet brush instead. She folded the dish rags across the kitchen sink. The original tenant, who reminded the hive in moments of tension that his name was on the lease, commended her efforts one day. He said he respected how she moved, how she got on with everyone, held her own, and that she was finishing school. He was especially impressed to learn that she was a foster kid. He said he remembered adults turning off their attention when he aged out too. He appreciated the cleaning, but said it wouldn't help them stay in the flat. Rent would go up after the holidays, and she was the only one without ends. No boosting, no fast food gig, no dime bags to sell, no panhandling, nothing. He was standing beside her at the kitchen sink when he suggested cashing in on the fresh fire beneath her skin. She was facing the dishwasher. She was facing the dishwater, and he, a living room stocked with the revelers behind them. He was leaning in, his voice a rumbling whisper. Though she knew name on the lease wasn't a friend, a mentor, a good shepherd, or even likely a good person, she was titillated by the optics of him consulting with her. That any glimpse from the living room framed her as a confidant, possibly chosen for a special task. She knew how her stomach pinched when another roommate or party guest stood in the scope of his focused attention. The apartment made her think of Lord of the Flies, a school reading assignment where boys who were stranded on an island govern themselves and devolve into their most base behavior, led by a charismatic young sadist. Lise propped against the kitchen counter in a wide stance. His arms were pretzeled, and he continued his proposition, long fingers pinned beneath his pits. His arms were thicker than those of the liquor fugue boys who would be trying to reach for her in the sofa while she slept. He could be as juvenile as the rest of them, but his physique was solidly more man than boy. He leaned in even closer as he spelled out the compromise, the tips of his fingers grazing the plump flesh on the back of her arm. The proposition didn't sound as malignant as it would become. A few investments a month, he called them. She expected the same conveyor of boys who'd been cycling through their party since she arrived in early spring. She calculated keeping up the investments until she could grab her diploma the following year and run out into her future. Your mother learned about you the day before graduation. She wasn't able to hold down food and could barely keep her eyes open during the ceremony. She sat and stood when everyone else did, followed the kid in front of her down their aisle, up the platform stairs and across the stage. Shake hands, smile and pose, return to their seats. She bypassed the line leader as he slowed to turn down their row. She walked past the chairs, past the curious eyes and ushers, out of the building and down to the bus stop 2 blocks away. She smiled weakly at the congratulatory greetings and the waves at her graduation gown, shiny and powder blue. You slept in the nest of that gown, concealed on a closet floor while your mama worked. She had commandeered the second bedroom in time for your arrival. The slit of the acetate fabric whispered if you stirred, and your mama would suspend the world, listening for your whimper or squeak. Mama wanted to make sure that you would never wonder if she was coming.
Oh, Dasha, that's a wonderful reading.
Thank you. I have one short one to close us out and kind of give all the mystery, all the people, all the emotions, and also bring us up a little bit.
All right.
Okay. And it's called Demon. Hey, Royal, it's Bug. I'm back in the world, kind of. Me and Queen Anne and Fatima were a snotty mess for 2 days. Really glad we made the time, though. We lit a candle for you, too, my guy. This is going to keep hitting us hard for a while. Please don't try to thug it out by yourself. Real men cry, you know. Okay. I'm still out of commission until the weekend, covering shifts for the NICU this week. So unless you want to talk at 4 in the morning, text me or send a voice note. Love you. What's up, Bug? It's Royal. Thanks for getting back to me. Yeah, voice notes are perfect. And thank you for not calling me at 4 a.m. I still don't know how folks do competent stuff that early in the morning. Yo, I'm glad y'all had a snotty, messy time. And you brought me along too. That's what's up. So, I wanted to ask her opinion on something. A theory, I guess. You know how in horror movies when they find a corpse with that frozen, screaming face, aliens, ghosts and stuff, how the face keeps making the detectives ask what could have scared them like that? That's the feeling I get about these pins and cards and collages. It all makes my brain scream, what could have scared Shay into taking herself out? What? I know it doesn't matter, but it does. But it doesn't. She's still not here. I don't know, Bug. Hey, you. I was not ready for an alien movie. I'm not laughing, but you're a trip. And I get what you're saying, though. She's absolutely the last person I would have guessed to be suicidal. Ugh, I hate that word. But that's the wild part, right? How you never know. Even if we talked every day and told each other everything, we can never know. I ask myself every day, why didn't she say something? What did I miss? I go back and forth from being mad at her and being mad at myself. I'm trying to give myself some grace, though. But my heart is going to be broken for a while. Grace. That's the word I needed to hear. My mind keeps looping, searching for signs and clues, some fragment of a story I overlooked. Then I imagine the weeks that she was isolated after the accident. Was she trapped with a taunting thought? Was she snatched up by a new one? You know what else, Bug? We never got a clear story about what happened that night. How she ended up in the hospital in the first place. And that ooh, you know what? Grace. Grace. Ooh. This is the part where I rub your back and tell you to go outside for some fresh air. I don't think there are any monsters or poltergeists royal. There was a demon, though. Something that caught up with her when she was down and alone. We loved Shay. And we get to keep doing that forever. Thank you.
Yes.
We love her.
We
do.
do. Dasha, talk a little bit about how you came to write this story.
This initial idea came, I had a friend who works in TV and movies, and he challenged me to write a screenplay. I said, well, I write poems and I write fiction, and, that's enough. And I don't know that the formatting, he said, it's all storytelling. You're right. So I wrote this as a screenplay that turned out to be not a very good screenplay, but the character stayed with me. So I would say I took this retreat, I wrote this out easily 15 years ago. Wow. Right? And so the thing that I learned about that exercise and and having to tell a story entirely in dialogue and entirely in motion, all the ways you show and don't tell. But she just sat with me, and I just would write. So now I have the plot, and typically the way that I write is I have the character first, and I figure them out as I find out what's going on. I'm surprised as anybody else of what's going to happen. But this is the first time I had a whole storyline already mapped out. But because it started with this premise of what if all of your exes and your former lovers were called to your homegoing, to your funeral?
Yeah.
Right? For some people that would be a terror, that would be a horror film. For some people that would be a comedy, and sure, it's kind of in the middle. And so because the story idea came with her already gone, that's why the first page, you're at her funeral.
Yeah.
And going back and writing her, the screenplay was written around her. Right? So it's going in and writing her. So I got to know her after I've already mapped out all of her movements, all of her good and bad decisions, all the things that are said about her that people knew about her. So now I had to get to know her in a way. And I wrote her so that the readers can learn her the way that I learned her. And it mirrors the way that we act out in the real world, where it's so easy to judge people by their actions. It's so easy to what I would have done and what I never would have done, and I don't understand just how someone moves through the world. And everyone has some, I've described it as a smudge on this image of themselves. Some hide it really well. For some, it weighs them to one side or the other, and they're not able to move. And if you don't examine it and you don't share it, you'll never know. People around you that love you will never know it's there. And I also think that you're allowed to keep some things to yourself. So it's not that it has to be shared. But in getting to understand how she moved, the way that she moved, what her aches were, was almost a spiritual experience for me writing her. this way. And so I wanted the reader's experience to mirror that discovery. And so then the other part of it is with Baker's dozen, meaning actually 13, that's where the mystery comes in. So if you just hear dozen, you think you're looking for 12, and then you realize, what?
Oh, there's one more.
Yeah, this is mysterious person.
Uh-huh.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of risk. And I'm just, you never choose a favorite child. So she's not my favorite character, but right now she's my favorite.
Right. What's next?
What is next is I'm going to write a memoir. I decided to do that.
Great.
I'm going to do a memoir. I'm going to do another collection of poetry. Or actually, I should say another collection of poetry. I'm going to do a collection that is probably only poems. So many of the things I've written before have been poems with short stories, with excerpts, with essays. So I have a lot of beginnings of scribblings over these last few years that I'm going to sit with. Now that she is out in the open, now that she's outside.
I think that would make a great TV show, though.
I think so too. Someone asked me recently what I would hope for. I would like to see it not end, but take the next life the way that it started as a screenplay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Would it change how you would, if you would turn it into a screenplay? Would that have changed a lot?
I'm gonna say yes, because I know because of initial version of the screenplay, I really put her through a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I put people through a lot because you're thinking about a movie and all the things that want to happen on this screen. So just slow it down a bit, sink into these characters a little bit. So it'll even be more rich. So maybe
maybe it's a series.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're on the same page. I think a series more than a movie might be the plan. So yeah, we're gonna call it into existence.
Yes.
Right here we have now manifested.
Right here in Beaverdale Books.
It just happens.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming by.
Absolutely, I appreciate the invitation.
You bet. You come back, okay? Yeah, Baker's Dozen.
Baker's Dozen.